The harsh glare of the television lights beat down, hot and unforgiving. Ngozi, resplendent in a vibrant blue Ankara gown, held the microphone close, her voice sharp and clear, cutting through the buzzing whispers of the assembled press. "My husband, Emeka," she declared, a mocking lilt in her tone, "is a man of modest ambitions. While I strive for excellence, he is content to count the grains of sand." A ripple of laughter, quickly stifled, spread through the crowd. Emeka stood beside her, his head bowed almost imperceptibly, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. The cameras flashed, capturing every agonizing detail, every flicker of humiliation on his face. Ngozi leaned in, her smile widening, a predator's grin. "Indeed," she continued, her voice dripping with scorn, "he is a king of nothing." If you're captivated by stories that delve into the heart of African life and human drama, remember to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more authentic tales to life. The silence that followed Ngozi's final cutting remark was more deafening than any shout. It hung heavy in the humid Lagos air, punctuated only by the whirring of camera lenses and the frantic scribbling of notepads. Emeka remained still, a statue carved from quiet endurance. His eyes, though downcast, held a depth of emotion that few in the room bothered to decipher. Most saw only a man publicly shamed, a husband diminished by his own wife. Ngozi, basking in the momentary power of her words, adjusted her stance, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. She glanced at Emeka, a fleeting, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. The journalists, sensing the tension, pressed closer, their questions a barrage of pointed accusations and barely veiled judgments. "Madam Ngozi, are you implying your husband contributes nothing to your joint ventures?" one reporter called out. Another, bolder still, asked, "Chief Emeka, do you have a response to your wife's statements?" Emeka's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching almost imperceptibly. He said nothing. His silence, however, only seemed to fuel Ngozi's narrative, painting him as weak, incapable, and utterly defenseless. A young intern, new to the press corps, felt a pang of discomfort. This was not just a story, it was a public execution of a man's dignity. But what happened next left everyone silent.
The press conference continued, a slow-motion unraveling of a marriage played out for public consumption. While Ngozi fielded questions about her latest collection and her vision for the future, the buzz amongst the journalists shifted. Whispers about Emeka began to circulate, hushed but insistent. "Is he truly that incompetent?" one reporter murmured to her colleague. "I heard he tried to start a small agricultural venture, but it failed spectacularly," another chimed in, embellishing a half-truth. The perception of Emeka as a failure solidified, fueled by Ngozi's carefully crafted narrative. A few older journalists, veterans of countless celebrity scandals, exchanged knowing glances. They recognized the pattern, a public relations move designed to elevate one partner by demolishing the other. But even they were surprised by the sheer audacity of Ngozi's attack. It was one thing to separate quietly, another entirely to tear down a spouse in front of a global audience. The younger reporters, eager for a sensational headline, leaned in, their pens scratching furiously. Emeka, meanwhile, remained in his chosen silence, a still point in the swirling chaos. His eyes, though still lowered, seemed to observe rather than absorb. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift, but it was there. But what happened next left everyone silent. Among the throng of onlookers, a man named Jide stood, his brow furrowed with concern. Jide had been Emeka's closest friend since their university days, a bond forged over late-night study sessions and shared dreams. He knew Emeka better than almost anyone, knew the quiet strength that lay beneath his calm demeanor. The words Ngozi spoke were a deliberate fabrication, a cruel distortion of the truth. He knew Emeka was not a failure. He was a man who chose his battles carefully, who valued substance over show. Jide's hands clenched into fists, a wave of protectiveness washing over him. He wanted to shout, to defend his friend, to expose Ngozi's calculated cruelty. But he also knew Emeka's pride, his abhorrence of public spectacle. Any intervention from him would only escalate the situation, drawing more unwanted attention. He caught Emeka's eye for a fleeting moment. In that brief exchange, Jide saw not despair, but a profound sadness, a weariness that went bone deep. He saw also a flicker of something else, something resolute and unbroken. Jide vowed then and there to offer Emeka his unwavering support, no matter the public narrative. He knew the true measure of his friend. But what happened next left everyone silent. Ngozi, having effectively used Emeka as a stepping stone for her own self-aggrandizement, began to pivot the discussion back to her latest fashion line. She spoke of intricate beadwork from the Yoruba artisans, of silk woven in Ghana, of sustainable practices that were supposedly at the heart of her brand. The cameras, once focused on Emeka's humiliation, now turned back to her, capturing her animated gestures, her confident smile. Yet even as she spoke of ethical sourcing and cultural appreciation, an undercurrent of tension lingered. Some in the audience, particularly the older women who had observed her rise, felt a prickle of unease. They remembered the Ngozi who had spoken with such earnestness about community, about lifting others. This new Ngozi, polished and sharp, seemed to have forgotten those roots. The weight of public expectation, the pressure to always be seen as successful, glamorous, and untouchable, had molded her into this formidable, yet strangely brittle figure. She was trapped in her own creation, an image she had to constantly uphold, even if it meant sacrificing the very people who had helped her climb. Her pronouncements now felt hollow, echoing in the cavernous room. But what happened next left everyone silent. As Ngozi held court, Emeka's mind drifted, a protective mechanism against the biting words. He remembered their first date, a simple meal at a roadside buka where they had talked for hours under the gentle glow of a single street lamp. She had spoken passionately about her dreams, about creating beauty, about making a mark on the world. He had listened, captivated, his heart swelling with admiration. He remembered the joy in her eyes when she sold her first dress, the quiet pride in her voice. He had seen a spark, a genuine light in her then. Where had that light gone? Had it been extinguished by the relentless pursuit of fame, or merely dimmed by the harsh realities of ambition? He looked at her now, a stranger almost, standing just feet away, yet miles apart. The woman he had loved, the woman he had married, seemed to have been swallowed whole by this formidable public persona. A wave of profound sadness, deeper than any humiliation, washed over him. It was the sorrow of witnessing something beautiful shatter, piece by irreparable piece. He clenched his jaw, not in anger, but in the effort to contain this unexpected grief. But what happened next left everyone silent.
Behind the cameras, a television producer named Adewobi frowned, adjusting her headset. This was good television, undeniably. High drama, a celebrity scandal, perfect for ratings. Yet a part of her felt a deep sense of disquiet. She had known Emeka tangentially, through mutual acquaintances. He was known as a man of integrity, quiet competence. This public assassination of his character felt wrong. She glanced at the live feed, then at Ngozi, whose performance was impeccable, a masterclass in controlled outrage and self-pity. Ngozi knew the power of a carefully constructed narrative, how easily public opinion could be swayed. She had a job to do, to deliver compelling content, but a small voice inside her whispered about the human cost, about the potential for irreversible damage. She considered cutting away, shifting to a pre-recorded segment, but the live numbers were spiking. The audience, like hungry hyenas, was feasting on the spectacle. She made a mental note to send a quiet message to Emeka later, an offer of a different kind of platform, if he ever chose to speak. It was a small gesture, perhaps futile, but it eased a flicker of her conscience. But what happened next left everyone silent. Ngozi's personal assistant, a young woman named Zara, stood nervously at the edge of the stage, out of the camera's view. Her eyes darted between Ngozi's demanding figure and Emeka's bowed head. Zara admired Ngozi's drive, her relentless work ethic. She had learned so much from her, had seen firsthand the dedication it took to build a fashion empire. But lately, Ngozi's temper had grown shorter, her demands more unreasonable. The atmosphere in the studio was often tense, punctuated by Ngozi's sharp reprimands. Zara had witnessed Emeka's quiet attempts to mediate, to calm the storm. She had seen him bring Ngozi tea when she was stressed, offer a comforting word when a collection wasn't going as planned. He was never loud, never demanding. His kindness was a quiet stream in a desert of ambition. Today's spectacle filled Zara with a deep sense of sadness and confusion. How could a woman speak so cruelly about the man who had clearly supported her for so long? The other staff members, huddled together, exchanged furtive glances. They felt it too, the palpable discomfort, the injustice hanging in the air. Their loyalty to Ngozi was tinged with a growing unease. But what happened next left everyone silent. Amidst the chaos, a subtle shift occurred. Emeka, who had previously maintained a posture of passive endurance, now slowly, almost imperceptibly straightened his shoulders. His head remained slightly bowed, but there was a newfound firmness in his stance, a quiet defiance. He did not look up, did not meet Ngozi's gaze, nor did he acknowledge the flashing cameras. Instead, his eyes fixed on a point just beyond the journalists, a point only he could see. It was an unspoken message, a quiet declaration that he was not broken, not diminished, despite the public assault. This subtle change did not go unnoticed. By everyone, Jide, his friend, saw it and felt a surge of pride. Adewobi, the producer, noticed the shift in his energy, a silent resilience. Even a few of the more experienced journalists, accustomed to reading subtle cues, sensed a change in the air. The man before them was not crumbling, he was simply enduring, and in that endurance lay a power that Ngozi's theatrical performance could not touch. The crowd, however, was still largely engrossed in Ngozi's narrative, blinded by the spectacle. But what happened next left everyone silent. Ngozi, emboldened by the lack of direct opposition from Emeka, pushed further. She began to speak in carefully veiled criticisms, painting a picture of a husband who was a financial drain, a creative hindrance, a shadow in her magnificent light. She spoke of her sacrifices for their shared life, implying that she had carried the burden alone. Her voice, though calm, was laced with an insidious venom. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing her expressive eyes, her confident smile. She was in her element, controlling the narrative, shaping public perception with every carefully chosen word. She truly believed her own story, had convinced herself that Emeka was indeed the obstacle to her ultimate glory. Her confidence grew with each question, each nod from the journalists. She felt untouchable, invincible, the undisputed queen of her own narrative. The crowd, for the most part, absorbed her words, swayed by her conviction. Few dared to question the powerful, successful woman before them. Her truth became their truth. But what happened next left everyone silent. An older journalist named Chike, a man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen many public dramas unfold, felt a growing sense of unease. He had covered Ngozi's rise from a small atelier to international fame. He had also interviewed Emeka on several occasions, often about his quiet contributions to local community projects, his work in sustainable engineering. Chike knew Emeka was not the feckless man Ngozi was portraying. He remembered a particular project where Emeka had spearheaded the installation of solar panels in a remote village, bringing electricity to homes for the first time. It was not glamorous, not newsworthy in the way Ngozi's fashion shows were, but it was profoundly impactful. Chike studied Emeka, noting the quiet strength in his jawline, the absence of anger in his eyes. He saw not a defeated man, but one holding himself with immense restraint. This public shaming felt disproportionate, cruel. He decided against asking a probing question that would further fuel Ngozi's fire. Instead, he made a quiet decision. He would hold his story, observe, and perhaps seek a private interview with Emeka later. Something felt deeply wrong here, but what happened next left everyone silent. As the press conference wore on, a subtle shift began to occur at Ngozi's demeanor. Her smile, once radiant and confident, began to falter at the edges. Her answers became slightly less fluid, her gestures a little more forced. Perhaps it was the sheer exhaustion of maintaining such an intense performance, or perhaps a flicker of doubt, a momentary crack in her carefully constructed facade. She glanced at Emeka again, a quick, almost involuntary dart of her eyes. He remained still, unmoving, his quiet presence an unsettling counterpoint to her increasingly animated display. His enduring silence, rather than confirming her narrative, was beginning to gnaw at her, a silent accusation that chipped away at her resolve. The energy she was expending to portray him as a non-entity was immense. The audience, still captivated by the drama, might not have noticed the subtle shift, but Zara, her assistant, did. She saw the strain around Ngozi's eyes, the tightening of her lips that signaled internal stress. The relentless spotlight, which Ngozi craved, was also beginning to burn her. But what happened next left everyone silent. Emeka, though physically present, had retreated into an inner sanctuary. He was reliving moments of his life that grounded him, memories that reaffirmed his true self, untouched by Ngozi's words. He saw his father, Baba Segun, a man of quiet dignity and immense wisdom, teaching him to till the soil, to respect the rhythm of nature. He remembered his mother's gentle hands, her unwavering love. He recalled the countless hours he had spent in his workshop, designing and building small, functional innovations that improved the lives of his community, even if they never made the headlines. These were his true achievements, his quiet contributions to the world. Ngozi's words, intended to diminish him, failed to penetrate this inner core. They were like pebbles thrown against a mighty rock, creating only momentary ripples on the surface. He understood, with a clarity that surprised him, that his value was not determined by Ngozi's assessment, nor by the fickle gaze of the public. His worth was inherent, earned through a lifetime of honest effort and principled living. This realization filled him with a quiet strength, a calm resolve. But what happened next left everyone silent. Just as Ngozi was delivering another polished answer, a hush fell over the back of the room. Heads began to turn, whispers rippled through the journalists. A figure was slowly making his way through the throng, a man of considerable age, his gait slow but deliberate. He was dressed in simple, traditional attire, a faded but well-maintained agbada, a cap on his head. There was nothing outwardly imposing about him, no entourage, no grand entrance, yet an aura of quiet authority seemed to precede him. He moved with an unhurried grace, his eyes scanning the room, taking everything in. Ngozi, momentarily distracted by the sudden shift in attention, paused in her speech, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. Who was this uninvited guest, daring to interrupt her moment? Emeka, still maintaining his posture, felt a strange stirring, a faint recognition. He hadn't looked up yet, but something in the sudden change in the room's atmosphere tugged at his senses. The man continued his slow, measured approach, drawing closer to the stage. But what happened next left everyone silent. Chapter 16. Baba Segun arrives. The man continued his measured walk, his gaze now fixed on Emeka. It was Baba Segun, Emeka's father. His face, etched with the wisdom of years, held a profound calm. There was no anger, no accusation, only a deep, unwavering presence. He reached the edge of the stage, stopping just a few feet from where Emeka stood. His eyes met Emeka's, and in that silent exchange, a lifetime of understanding passed between father and son. Emeka, for the first time since the press conference began, slowly, deliberately lifted his head. His eyes, though still reflecting a hint of weariness, now held a renewed light, a quiet strength that seemed to blossom in his father's gaze. Ngozi, finally recognizing the elder, felt a sudden chill. Baba Segun rarely left his village. His presence here was utterly unexpected and deeply unsettling. She watched, her carefully constructed composure threatening to crack. The journalists, sensing a new, unexpected development, clicked their cameras with renewed fervor, their anticipation palpable. This was a story taking an unforeseen turn. But what happened next left everyone silent. Baba Segun offered a small, almost imperceptible nod to Emeka. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, of respect, of quiet affirmation. It spoke volumes without uttering a single word. Emeka responded with an equally subtle nod, a shared understanding passing between them. The bond between them was evident, a silent language that transcended the noise and spectacle of the moment. The crowd, watching this silent interaction, felt a sudden shift in the air. The energy, which had been charged with Ngozi's cutting words, now softened, filled with a different kind of intensity. This was not the drama of public humiliation, but the profound, quiet connection between a father and son. Baba Segun then turned his gaze, slowly, deliberately, towards Ngozi. His eyes, though devoid of malice, held a piercing clarity that seemed to see directly into her. Ngozi, for the first time, felt truly exposed, the weight of his silent judgment far more impactful than any shouted accusation. Her confident smile vanished completely. Baba Segun remained silent for a long moment, allowing his presence to fill the space. The air in the room grew heavy, not with tension, but with an almost reverent quiet. The journalists, usually quick to shout questions, found themselves holding their breath, captivated by the old man's stillness. His eyes, still fixed on Ngozi, held a deep reflective quality. He did not accuse, did not condemn, he simply was. His wisdom, his innate authority, seemed to radiate from him, subtly shifting the entire dynamic of the press conference. Ngozi, who had always commanded attention with her assertive personality, found herself shrinking under his gaze. The carefully crafted image she presented to the world felt flimsy, transparent in the face of his quiet truth. She suddenly felt small, exposed, her words from moments before echoing with a new hollow sound in her own ears. This was not the kind of attention she sought, not the kind of power she understood. The room seemed to breathe with him, awaiting his next move, his next sound. But what happened next left everyone silent.
Finally, Baba Segun spoke, his voice surprisingly soft yet resonant, carrying clearly through the hushed room. "My daughter," he addressed Ngozi directly, his tone devoid of anger. "A strong tree, no matter how tall it grows, must remember the soil from which it sprouted." He paused, allowing his words to settle. "And a strong man," he continued, turning his gaze slightly towards Emeka, "does not boast of his strength, but shows it in the quiet lifting of burdens." He then looked out at the assembled press, his eyes encompassing everyone. "Words, like seeds, once sown, bear fruit. Let us be mindful of what we plant." He did not elaborate, did not defend Emeka, did not attack Ngozi. His wisdom was presented as a simple truth, a reflection on fundamental principles. The profound simplicity of his statement, delivered with such calm authority, cut through the sensationalism like a clean blade. The journalists, used to aggressive sound bites, found themselves disarmed, truly stunned by the unexpected depth of his words. This was not a rebuttal, it was a recentering. But what happened next left everyone silent. Ngozi stood frozen, Baba Segun's words piercing through her carefully constructed defenses. She had expected outrage, defense, perhaps even a public argument. She had prepared for a fight. But this quiet, profound wisdom, delivered without a hint of malice, left her utterly disarmed. His gentle rebuke, unspoken yet palpable, resonated with a truth she had long suppressed. She saw her mother's worried face, remembered Emeka's unwavering support in the lean years, heard the echoes of her own forgotten ideals. The cameras continued to flash, but their intrusive light now felt cold, exposing. The triumphant smile she had worn moments before felt like a grotesque mask.
Her carefully cultivated image began to crumble, revealing the raw, vulnerable woman beneath. Tears welled in her eyes, not of anger, but of a sudden, overwhelming shame. She had sought to elevate herself by tearing down another, and in doing so had exposed a fundamental flaw in her own character. The strength she had projected was suddenly revealed as a brittle facade. But what happened next left everyone silent. Baba Sagun then turned and placed a hand gently on Emeka's shoulder. It was a firm, reassuring touch, a silent acknowledgement of his son's quiet endurance. He did not need to speak more words. His presence, his wisdom, and this simple gesture were enough. Emeka looked at his father, a slow, gentle smile gracing his lips, the first genuine smile he had shown that day. It was a smile of gratitude, of love, of quiet understanding. The bond between them, reaffirmed in this moment of crisis, was a powerful testament to familial strength. The journalists, witnessing this profound, unscripted moment, felt the energy in the room shift once more. The initial hunger for scandal had been replaced by a deep, almost reverent silence. They had come for drama, but had been given something far more profound, a glimpse into the quiet dignity of human connection and the potent power of understated truth. No one asked another question. The air was thick with reflection, not accusation. But what happened next left everyone silent. Baba Sagun then slowly turned and with the same unhurried grace began to make his way out of the press conference. He did not look back, did not seek further attention. His mission, whatever it was, seemed complete. His departure was as quiet and impactful as his arrival. Emeka watched him go, his heart filled with a quiet reverence for his father. Ngozi remained on stage, still and silent, her earlier bravado completely deflated. The microphones, which had been thrust eagerly towards her just moments before, now hung limply in the journalist's hands. The cameras, once focused solely on her, now lingered on the empty space where Baba Sagun had stood, then shifted to capture Ngozi's stunned, tear-filled face. The story had changed irrevocably. It was no longer about a wife humiliating her husband. It was about the unexpected power of quiet wisdom and the public unraveling of a carefully constructed facade. The room, once buzzing with eager anticipation, was now filled with a reflective quiet, a collective contemplation. But what happened next left everyone silent. As the last journalists slowly packed up their equipment, the harsh lights of the press conference were gradually dimmed. Ngozi stood alone on the stage, the vibrant blue of her Ankara gown now seeming to mock her inner turmoil. Emeka had quietly slipped away, following his father, leaving her to face the echo of her own words. The silence in the now empty room was deafening, each unspoken accusation amplified by the stillness. Zara, Ngozi's assistant, hesitantly approached, offering a glass of water. Ngozi took it with trembling hands, her eyes distant, unfocused. The public humiliation she had inflicted on Emeka had boomeranged, landing squarely on herself. The cameras had captured her vulnerability, her sudden, raw shame, and it would be plastered across headlines, replayed on screens. It was a humiliation far deeper, far more personal than anything she had intended for her husband. She had sought to control a narrative, but an old man's quiet wisdom had effortlessly dismantled it. The carefully constructed world she had built seemed to sway precariously on its foundations. But what happened next left everyone silent. Days turned into weeks. The incident at the press conference became a national talking point, not for the scandal Ngozi had intended, but for Baba Sagun's profound intervention. His words of wisdom resonated deeply, sparking conversations about respect, humility, and the true meaning of strength. Ngozi, retreating from the public eye, spent her time in quiet contemplation. The shame was a bitter pill, but beneath it lay a nascent understanding, a dawning realization of her own misguided path. She sought out her mother, Mama Ada, seeking comfort and counsel. Emeka, meanwhile, continued his quiet work, his dignity intact, his character affirmed by his father's powerful presence. He did not gloat, did not seek revenge. Instead, he simply continued to live his truth, unaffected by the fleeting opinions of the world. The path forward for their marriage was uncertain, perhaps even broken beyond repair, but for Ngozi, a seed had been planted by Baba Segun's words, a tiny flicker of hope for redemption, for a return to the values she had long forgotten. The humiliation was public, but the lesson was intensely private and profoundly transformative. But what happened next left everyone silent. And so the tale of Ngozi Emeka and of Baba Segun's unexpected arrival became a quiet legend, whispered in homesteads and shared around evening fires. It was a story not of grand battles or magical interventions, but of the subtle power of truth and the enduring strength of character. It taught that pride, when untempered by humility, can blind us to our own worth and to the value of those beside us. It reminded all that true respect is not demanded but earned, and that a man's silent endurance can speak louder than a woman's loudest boast. Like the mighty baobab tree, Emeka had stood firm, weathering the storm with roots deeply embedded in integrity and quiet strength. His father, Baba Segun, a wise old farmer, had shown everyone that the most potent truths are often found not in shouting, but in the gentle whisper of wisdom, reminding us that even in the brightest spotlight, the most profound lessons are learned in the quietest moments, leaving everyone to ponder the true meaning of a life lived with dignity.